Hello, everybody. This is Bia Lavachi, Executive Director of Chacruna. We're here blogging from the Arizona Psychedelic Conference 2019, and it's my great pleasure to be here with Matthew and Annie, with whom I've heard about them for years and years and years, kind of mythical images of this people growing peyote somewhere remotely in a state called Arizona or something like that. And it's great to be able to be here and meet maybe what I could call some really authentic hippies, or I don't know how to classify it. But they have a solid background of 40 years of, doing things down on the ground. And I think a pretty unique story in terms of what they're doing and, their role in this peyote world. So thanks for being here. And perhaps can you just tell us a little bit about your story?
Well, Annie and I have always been spiritual seekers, and after meeting each other in Philadelphia, we were both musicians. We had our psychedelic moment, and we knew that it was certainly something that wasn't dangerous in the right set and setting, and that it would be an antidote to fear, addiction, dominance. Psychedelics can do a lot of good things. And we went out to the Southwest for our honeymoon, and eventually met a man who was a peyotist, and he had a church that was in existence. He was paying for 160 acres of beautiful land in southeastern Arizona. And he, besides being a peyotist, had experience with Dr. Timothy Leary and the League for Spiritual Discovery. He told us he learned a lot of things not to do and a few to do from that experience. And he was also a roadman in the Native American Church, and his experiences there taught him that while the peyote was very powerful in healing people, the hierarchical setup of the Native American teepee ceremony would direct individuals to think that he was doing the healing, or that the leader or the roadman is doing the healing, where actually it's you are healing along with the peyote's help. So after meeting Emmanuel, I just thought, let's help. Let's make this happen and make Peyote Way Church. And so that's exactly what we did. And understanding the nature of our country, we went first to the sheriff's office, told him what we were going to do, and then we went to meet the judge, and we gave him a whole story of what we were going to do with peyote. And he knew that Emmanuel was a Native American Church priest or roadman. So he said, okay, you don't have any problem with us, because Arizona law says the bona fide use of peyote is protected by the free exercise clause. So, but he said we should document everything we do. So there's a big book in the Graham County, Arizona courthouse in the recorder's office that is filled with all the documents that we registered and my beloved partner Annie notarized as the notary public for the Peyote Way Church.
Awesome. Can you tell us, Annie, what rituals or what doctrine, what is it that you do in your church, in the Peyote Way?
We practice the solitary spirit walk, and that is a 3-day process of receiving communication and setting up an appointment. And then someone comes on a Thursday or Friday, fasts for 24 hours. The following day, we give them instructions for ingestion of the tea. And that night, they go out to a designated spirit walk area. And in the morning, we let them go after, if they want to rest and eat and unwind a little bit. So that's pretty much it.
Why do you guys give people tea, and why are they not eating fresh buttons? Is there a reason behind that?
There is, B. I've found that it's easier for beginners to ingest the tea. rather than eating fresh buttons. Fresh buttons take some real dedication and some real determination to keep it down.
Because of the bad taste.
And the nauseous response. Whereas with the tea, Annie's come up with a wonderful system that works for her and many others. I'm still a 50-50 puker. I tend to go too fast. But Annie's recommends that people take it one sip, make a 1 ounce sip, and then wait for 20 minutes. And repeat that process for the next 4 to 6 hours. And the more you get in you, the could enhance the response, although I've had experiences where I've just had a little bit and it was just as powerful as a large amount. It's not always that way, but it can happen. The dose-response relationship is very slippery.
So I gather that you guys came up with this recipe and this method as well. Are you the cook and idealizer of that tea that you guys give?
Right. It did take some practice, although I see that there's synchronicity in so many things, and as we've developed our process, I've noticed the Native American church ceremonies and even the growers or the distributors in Texas also have changed their methods. The drying of the sacrament is better and cleaner so that the peyote doesn't go through a rot phase. But yeah, we harvest the medicine and slice it into thin little chips, dry it very quickly, and then I powder 21 grams of that peyote, and then we put hot water on it. Basically because there's two things. One is with the green buttons, there is a time to harvest it. So rather than just cutting it whenever somebody comes, we harvest it at a certain time of year when it's at its peak of growth and hopefully of mescaline content. And also because having it in a bottle, there's a lot more control of, I always worry about getting dirt in the mash, which is the way a lot of Native American church ceremonies do it. So with the bottle, it's contained, and also you can just control how much you get in you.
Well, that's why I love to attend psychedelic conferences, because you can get like respectable advice from people with white hairs on how to better brew your psychedelics, and this calm and this gentleness and this wisdom that people that have connections to the land and connections to the sacraments can transpire, and also just this amazing depth of knowledge, this technologies of the sacred, this technologies of the self, and this unwritten history, this backstages of what happens, like this communication, this network between indigenous and non-indigenous, and harvesters and cooks, and so much that we don't know, and so much that we have to research and to learn about. That's really incredible, and it's very nice. I know that I'm just getting a tiny bit of the iceberg of knowledge behind your guys' work. So coming back more to down to earth, the rough part of the work, can you address briefly what are the legal challenges that the Peyote Way has faced?
Well, we are open to all people. So, we are more concerned about peyote than ancestry. And that's a big responsibility, because the native peoples who understood these plants as sacraments have taught us. So, and then they've been greatly abused. So we feel a lot of responsibility to do the right thing for the plant and for the people who have always recognized these plants as sacraments. Fortunately, in the United States, we have the Free Exercise Clause of the First Amendment of the Constitution. And we have, Reverend Trujillo was arrested for possession of peyote in 1966 in Colorado. He was acquitted because the court agreed that he was a peyotist and that he was indeed practicing a bona fide religion. And therefore, he should not be charged or arrested for doing such. So In Arizona, the law reads also that although peyote is a Schedule 1 controlled substance, its use in pursuit of bona fide religious faith is legal according to the Free Exercise Clause. So we've always tried to make sure that law enforcement agencies know what our practices are, and actually they've become good friends over the years. And I've found that, if you meet people heart to heart, face to face, eye to eye, it's a whole lot more difficult for them to bust your door down at 3 o'clock and throw you in jail. So that's been our methodology.
But that after you ran a legal case for 9 years, right?
That too. Well, that was with the federal government that right now will only allow peyote to be sold to members of the Native American Church. We thought that was discriminatory as to race, association, but according to the federal court system, we were told that we weren't being discriminated against racially. It was a political discrimination, and since the Native Americans have a special relationship with the federal government, the special relationship is one of a constrained idea of nation within a nation. It's okay for the federal government to come up with separate rules for one set of people and different rules for others. Personally, I don't agree.
Or perhaps they could extend those sets of rules for others. For sure, Native Americans deserve special rights, I think, but the legislation is also limited. So in one line, I'd say that federally you're not okay, but in terms of state and locally, you are okay. Is that a correct assessment?
Yeah, that's true. But the feds have no problem taking our money through taxes, and we have a 501c or 3 tax exemption from the U.S. Treasury, so we're okay with Treasury Department.
Well, because money talks. Okay. Okay, so coming back to the topic, kind of hard and challenging of Indians and non-Indians, did you face a lot of criticism by Native American communities for using peyote, or did you have actually Native Americans coming by, or a mix of all of those things?
All the above. All the above, for sure. Don't you say?
Yeah, no, there's always going to be a few people that think that it should be only for one group. But then there's the younger people. There's more interracial marriages going on, fewer and fewer pure blood, Native people. So I think the trend is going to be for more acceptance of all race peyote use.
Did you guys have the visit throughout the years of many Native American friends?
Not many, but the ones who did come were very interesting and also very helpful. So, when we went to the federal court, there were several Native Americans who accompanied the president of the NAC, and although they weren't very friendly to us, they were quite friendly with Reverend Trio, which is fine enough for me.
And what about this topic that I think is perhaps the most favorite and important one ever, which is peyote cultivation? I understand that you guys are like machine of creating peyotes. Is that something accurate to say something along these lines? What is it that you do?
Well, we realized that if we wanted to have access to peyote, we had to be growing it on church land. And so we started with a very small garden of 100 plants that were brought up to us from Texas. And whenever people bring us live plants, we have put them in the ground. We never used the live plants in ceremonies. We let them grow. So our intention is to be completely sustainable and to only use our own sacrament for spirit walks.
CB, the federal government supplies or makes available peyote to members of the Native American Church for 50 cents a top. When I say a top, that would be what commonly is called a peyote button. Well, cutting a peyote plant for 50 cents to me is an extinction price. And it's guaranteed that there will be less peyote every year until that changes. Now, I understand that the natives are among the poorest people in America, but this price certainly could be subsidized for natives. But indeed, the plant is priceless. I don't think we sell peyote at the church. We do suggest a $400 donation. And to me, that's for the land, the wood, the time, the people, the room. And the plant is making a certain sacrifice, so why shouldn't we? And in a materialist society, money is where you make your sacrifice. So it's, I believe, a fair exchange for an experience that could direct somebody's life in a way that will be good for them and their children and generations to come.
Yeah, I think that, for sure, I've witnessed firsthand in a few road trips to South Texas, the situation of peyote in the United States is depressing. It's going scarcer and scarcer, and little baby buttons are being collected all the time. At Chacruna Institute, we're worried about that, and we're involved in creating a little web series called The Peyote Files, documenting the work of Dr. Martin Terry, who has a license from the DEA to study peyote and has been documenting systematically the diminishing of peyote wild populations. And it's just a mathematical reality that there's more mouths out there to eat peyote than peyote's capacity to regenerate. So in that regard, I want to give you big kudos, because cultivation is a way to go. I would also be curious to know, do you find any pleasure in cultivating peyote?
Absolutely. Just like keeping any garden, there's a sympathy between the plants and the people who work with them, and we love transplanting. It's just a wonderful thing to feel the vibrancy, the health in the plants as we move them from planter to planter. And I definitely feel like they are communicating with us all the time. It's just if we're receptive. And I love them, and and they're great, and I want to take care of them, and they give back. I definitely feel like as long as I'm walking a straight path with peyote, it's going to be taking care of me and guiding my life.
I also understand that among some Native American communities there has been some resistance and some divide between some people that want to cultivate and think that cultivation is important, and others that want to maybe buy land and have peyote in the wilderness, but don't want to cultivate because they think it's bad peyote, or some of them have had bad experiences in cultivating and have cultivated puffy peyotes that are not very potent and have had a kind of backlash and from other communities saying, well, that's not good peyote. What do you know about this topic about
Well, I don't know a lot about that. I have heard the arguments, and even I, after eating peyote for 5-10 years, I couldn't imagine not having peyote in the ground. When I first started to plant sacrament and the peyote house, the first building that we made on church land for peyote, to me it had to be in the ground. It would be sacrilege to put it in a planter. But over the course of years, I said, well, peyote's telling me to, it's okay. We need to move things around. We need to be a little more practical here. So we have peyote in the planter, and it makes it easier for us to make sure that the soil quality is top notch, and that the plants are healthy, and if they've outgrown a certain area, we can transplant them and move them into another. Certainly, that's why I'm hoping that the government will allow testing. I think what Dr. Terry is doing is magnificent, needs to be done, but why only one place?
Why only one guy?
Yeah.
Exactly. It's kind of impressive how there's little done here in the U.S. about this topic, and in That's also why we decided to do this live interview, to report from the ground what's happening, because it's pretty unique. And I'm kind of a conference rat, and I go from conference to conference for the last 20 years. And it's very impressive how peyote is, it's not included in the scene of psychedelic science when it's an original, unique, authentic sacrament of this land, of the United States of America. It's completely left out and abandoned out of the psychedelic boom. There's very little being done about peyote. People couldn't care less about peyote. The Native Americans are perhaps the most stigmatized and marginalized populations of this country. So it's good to see this topic being included in this conference. I guess I'll just be curious what motivates you guys to come out from that hiding spot with this marvelous garden to come and talk in a conference like this. Why did you accept this invitation, and why are you here? What is important to tell?
Well, it is just in Tempe, and we live down the road about 3.5 hours, and that was probably the biggest reason. We were invited by a church member, and it just felt good. It seemed like the time was right to share.
Yeah, I turned down major media corporations in the last 2 years, mainly because I wasn't sure that they would handle the information in a way that I would think would be correct. And so this was an opportunity to make ourselves known. Personally, I don't think we're hiding. We've got a sign on the highway. Our Adopt a Highway sign's been there for longer than most people would imagine, 25 years or so. But so we're not a secret in Graham County. But, I would think the biggest reason why there's the inhibition to talk about peyote is because America doesn't want to talk about genocide. And genocide is exactly what happened to the Native Americans of this people. It's a very terrible practice that human beings perpetrate on each other. And but the only way to end it, I believe, is to talk about it. And so we should understand that we thought of these peoples as less than human, and that anything they did was of no value. And so, I mean, it is true that imitation is the highest form of flattery. So I approach the sacrament with as much humility and grace as I can muster.
Well said. Thanks very much, and keep on tuned. We're going to keep on blogging from the Arizona Psychedelic Conference. Big hug from Bialabachi and the Chacruna team.